I get really close here. Now, as I'm going along here, I'm using a straight line between everything. But I've got all these pixels that are all a little jagged. Do I go in and do I create a path that's like this along here? Absolutely not. Okay? I could, way too much time. And here's the advantage of using the pen tool. So I'm going to start off here, I'm going to make it big, and I'm going to go ahead and click right there, start it off, click right here. Okay? Straight line, don't need to go ahead and do any click and pull. This is a curve, and I could do one of two things with this. I can take this and I can go all the way over the curve like this and do that, but then I have to deal with this little handle. Option click, suck the handle right back in. Okay? Straight line yet again, up, and I have a curve, so I'm going to come and I'm going to curve that right over, zoom in really close to see. I have a handle sticking out, option suck in the handle. I'm going to put a point right there at the top to get the dome. I'm going to come back down here. That's going to be too long, so I'm going to pull that handle back in to land that dome. And then I'm going to come over here and do that. Handle's pointing the wrong direction. Option click to suck that handle back in. Go all the way on up until I get that curve. Curve over the top, click and pull. This is going in a straight line, so I don't have to do anything with that handle. It's pointing exactly the direction that I want to go. Click on that. I get my curve, get right to there, click and pull. Handle's going the wrong direction. Option click to suck it in. Curve that right around the top. Curve that right there at the farthest point. And I'm going to come down here, and I want to put it right about there with that change of direction, right there. I'm going to need to suck that in just a little bit. And then right back there as well, straight across. Click and drag at that point, suck that handle in, it's going the wrong direction. Do a straight one down there, all the way on down. And now I've got my little reflection here, okay? It's kind of reflecting off the mailbox. And, well, actually, it's actually going all the way right on down. So this isn't in the right point. I'm actually going to hit delete and go right back. Now, I've actually deleted that point from the path, and now I have to reconnect that path. This is why you got to pay attention to the pen tool. See that little asterisk? I get that asterisk? It says I'm starting a new path. I don't want to. I want to continue on. So when I see this, I see that my path was left right there. I need to reconnect to that path, okay? Because I put that one point in there, and I didn't want that point there, okay? I can't delete the last point by using my delete anchor point with a pen tool, because where do I go? So I hit delete, and it deletes that last path. I need to go back to my last point, and I get my little pen tool with a little connector there. I need to reconnect. Whenever you see the asterisk, you are going to be starting a new path. I don't want to. I want this to be a single path. Find my last open path, and then I can reconnect with this, bring it in, click on that, go around, and I'm going to zoom through this really quickly here. I'm going to get to the top of my mailbox right there, come down along the side, put that right there. Get it. Ooh, yeah, there we go. Option click, zoom in a little bit there. It's a little bit off. Take that, kind of park it right there, connect the pen tool, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to go through and do the whole thing. I'm just going to go around these particular letters right here. I'm using the space bar to get my hand tool to move very quickly, so I don't have to keep stopping and doing mess up what I'm doing right there. And away we go through the whole thing. So I'm going to complete the path really quickly here, and I'm just going to go back over here and go in and complete that path right there. So there's my selection around that object. And in order to turn this into a selection, I can always right-click on my, actually click on my cheese grater here, and I can turn this into a selection. Other easier ways to turn this path into a selection, hold down the Command key on the path, right there, Command click, turns it into a selection, or, even better yet, Command return, and it turns it into a selection. Okay? How good of a selection did I do? Because a path is going to just connect points together, and I know that all my pixels are jagged. Okay? So what's nice about this is if I was using the lasso tool or something like that, I realize that if I use my lasso tool, this is really hard with a lasso tool or something to go along the edge. I've turned this into a selection, and my selection isn't correct. Easy. I'm going to deselect that. I'm going to go back to activate my path. go back to my pen tool, and I'm going to take that path right there, and I'm just going to edit my path. Command click, turn, or command return, reactivates the path. So this is a whole lot easier than trying to adjust a selection by adding to or taking away from a selection here. It's just absolutely brilliantly easy when it comes to changing it. Now, how do I know if my path is really where it's supposed to be? Well, this is how. When I see this, my path is not in the right place. Okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to adjust the path. And how does it know what pixel to select and what pixel not to select? Because I see this path is one smooth line, and I know these are squares. How does that work? Well, whenever I see the path right here, anything inside the path, if I have more than half a pixel inside the path, it's going to select that pixel. Okay? It's going to select this pixel right here because more than half of it is inside the path. It will definitely select this one. It'll select this one. It'll select that one. It's not going to select that pixel there because more of it is outside the path. Watch this. So it won't select this pixel. I do command return, and it didn't select that pixel. Okay? So now when I look at my path, I can see this, and I can see my path, and I'm just going to put a point here, and I can move this in so I can actually snap to my pixels here, and I can actually adjust that path so that I can do an average of what I'm going to select. Now, because we're dealing with an image here, I think that I'm doing a really good selection and I want to include those pixels. No, you don't. Because those are the fringe pixels, and those extra little pixels on the edge there, if we put it on a dark background, are going to show up. So I'm actually going to take my path and I'm going to put it well inside all of my structured pixels here. Yes, I'm going to lose those exterior pixels, but those exterior pixels aren't really part of the image. They're there in Photoshop and they're anti-aliased to kind of get that softer effect right there. And so now when I do my selection, I have it completely inside here, and now when I select my object, I am leaving those pixels out of there, but I know I'm leaving them out of there for a reason. So now as I go around my entire document and I look and I see, I can see how my selection's done. Oh, that selection's well outside the range of what I want it to. Command D for deselect, select back on my path, get my pen tool, snap my path a little bit further in, command return, I've just adjusted my selection. You can't adjust a selection that fast by using the magic wand tool or the lasso tool, the marquee tool, and add to and subtract from. That's why the path is so absolutely awesome to have. Okay? Works great. So a lot of times people will say, okay, you know, I can go in and I need to outline my object. And so they take something like this and they say, I want a path around my object. So they take their magic wand tool and they select the white area, they invert the selection, and they go over to their paths panel here and they say, okay, make this a path. Right? And it's like, okay, I've got my path, and it's like, that's so ridiculously easy. The problem is when you turn this into a selection and convert it into a path, it's actually going in and your path is actually following these weird little tolerances. And you get kind of this wavy line thing, which is absolutely awful, around your object. And you see, it just does an absolutely horrible job. The only way you're going to get a good path is if you learn the pen tool and you learn to actually go around your object. It's the only way to do it. Okay? So turning a selection into a path gives you a horrible path. Plain and simple. That's all there is to it. So you just have to learn how to get all around. Now, when you're dealing with objects like this, you know, bikes, and you got all these spokes, this is where the pen tool just absolutely shines. Because you can go through here really quickly and get everything exactly where you want it to, a whole lot better than adding to and selecting or subtracting from your selections. Even with the spokes that are out of focus, I would do two selections here. I would do one around everything that's in focus. I would do one around everything out of focus. So I would have two different selections because I can't blur the pen tool, okay? The pen tool is a line. There is no selection with the pen tool. It's what I do with the selection after I've gone in and done my path. So with the blurred spokes, I would do the best I could around the spokes right here. I would then take that selection, and once I'd activate that, then it would take that selection and make a mask or soften that selection from there. Okay? But the pen tool is going to give you that really cool ability to select. So the pen tool as a means to select, super, super awesome. Once you get good at it, it's one of the fastest ways to go through and select objects that are very difficult to select, okay? So this mailbox here, if it wasn't on a white background, because so many people are like, well, I'll just select the white background and delete it. But what happens if it's in a setting, you know? It's in a cul-de-sac with everything and you've got trees and bushes and things that are in focus. Trying to select and deselect and erase, no way. The pen tool, put the path around it, make that path look beautiful, adjust it however you want to, Command return to check your selection, doesn't work, deselect, go back, edit your path. Really quick, really easy. The other side of the pen tool is going in and creating really cool vector graphics, okay? Vector graphics in Photoshop. Yes, vector graphics in Photoshop. You mean not those little crunchy pixels? No, actual vector graphics here. Seriously, vector graphics. So the difference is, with a vector graphic, I start up a document here, and you see when I start up a new document here, everything's square pixels. I can't start up and create a vector document in Photoshop, but I can do vector artwork. And vector artwork is nothing more than paths that are just simply filled with a color. And we know those as a shape layer. So since this is our pen tool, we have all of our different shapes right here, and we can draw these shapes. And I know every once in a while you've gone in and you've used the pen tool here, and something's happened. You've drawn with the pen tool here, and all of a sudden it starts to fill with color. And you're just like, what's going on? That's a shape layer. It's a path that is basically defining the area, and it allows us to fill it with a color. How that works is, when I was doing a path to turn into a selection, I had my pen tool selected, my control bar, and I was actually doing a path. And nothing was happening with that path, nothing was being filled in, because that path was going to be used as a selection. Well, now I want to do this as a shape. So as I draw this shape, it's going to fill with a color. So I can set my fill color up here from my swatch panel, and I can fill with gradients, everything else. And one of the newest features is I can actually put a stroke around this as well. So now if I go in and I draw a shape, it's going to fill with a color, and I can actually go in and say, okay, put a stroke around my object, and I can control the point size. This is relatively new. We couldn't do this in CS6. We did have shape layers in CS6, and they looked slightly different. A shape layer in CS6 actually came up with my image here, and then it was actually drawing a vector mask over here. They've changed that for the Creative Cloud. This tells me it's a shape layer, because I mean, it looks just like a pixel-based layer, doesn't it? It tells me it's a shape layer because of this little tool in the lower right-hand corner. So this is vector, right? Absolutely. So I zoom in. Does that look like vector? No, because Photoshop cannot display vector in here. It's always displayed as pixels. And I can tell you, years ago when I started using this, we got into really big arguments, and people said, that's not vector. Yes, it is. Because if I go in to edit this shape right here, and I click on this shape, I can use my pen tool to go ahead and edit this shape. Okay, there it is. Yes, it is vector, because it couldn't be raster, or else I couldn't do it this way. If this were raster, I would have to use all of my raster editing tools, the paintbrush, the clone stamp tool, the eraser, okay? If I go in and I use the eraser, because it's not pixel-based. Yes, it looks pixel-based, it is not, okay? How's that for confusing? Just when you thought you knew what you were doing, Photoshop is like, nope, this is what it looks like. So this is all shape layers. Couple drawbacks of shape layers is I can only have one color on my shape layer. If I have my shape layer and I draw other shapes here, everything is going to be exactly the same, okay? I can't go in and make this blue and this one red and have it be on the same layer. It doesn't work, okay? Everything that I do on that layer is going to be that color. So if I go in and I change my fill on that object, everything that's on that shape layer will be filled differently as well. Unlike pixels where I can fill anything anywhere on that layer with any color, that's not how it works with a shape layer. But the fun part with this is I can go in and I can use my awesome shape tools here, rectangle, rounded corner, rectangle, and make this work. Big advantage. I want to do a rounded corner rectangle. And I draw my rectangle right there and it comes up and oh, guess what? I can go in and I can round my corners when I do this, before I draw or after I draw, doesn't make any difference. Link those together so I can see. And I do that and now I can round my corners. Try that with a raster-based one, okay? So I want to go in and I would like to do a raster-based shape that looks just like that. I go in and I want to round my corners. Well, how do I round my corners on something that's pixel-based? So I draw a shape, I go in, I sample that color, I fill that shape, and now I want to round my corners on a pixel-based item. So I take my eraser and I round my corners. I go in, set the opacity up right there, and I round my corners. Okay, that's pixel-based. Then the client comes back and says, oh, could you round it less? Sure. I'm going to take my paintbrush here, going to sample that color, and now I can round it less. There we go. That's less rounded. So having this be an actual shape layer here, I can now edit this with my pen tool, and I can click on any of this, and my properties come up here, and I can edit it right here. I want to make it slightly taller. Well, I can go in and I can take that shape, and I can make that slightly taller as well. And I have that. And now I can go in and if I wanted to make this slightly taller and not mess up my corners, I would transform this and of course I stretch my corners. And you see this all the time when people make buttons. I was at the store yesterday and the little pin pad there, they had created these nice little buttons. Somebody had created them and then stretched them. So it looked just like that. It had these really flat and then really fast corners. That's why, because it was pixel-based. Now I can render any of these as pixels if I want to, but for editing capabilities, shape layers are really awesome. And with any shape layer that I have here, I can get back to my actual shape right there, okay? I can go in and have my shape. Let me just draw another one here. I'm gonna draw some fun shapes here. I'm gonna go to my shape tool, and I can have all these custom shapes come up here. Well, this is pretty cool. So I have all these custom shapes and I can draw something like that and there's my shape. Fully editable with the pen tool, with a direct selection tool. There I have it. Okay, put a stroke around it as well. Great, awesome, fun, whatever. Got that. Here's all my shapes. You want more shapes? Click on your shape. Go ahead and call this up. Animals, arrows, frames, grime vector pack, light bulb, music, nature, objects. Ooh, objects. I'm going to add that to my list there. Cool, look at all those objects. Ooh, puzzle pieces, wow. Puzzle pieces, great. I can do a bevel and emboss, an inner outer glow, all that other stuff on these as well. And this is gonna be really cool, all right? Wow. Now, if I change this shape, just by going in and using my pen tool, I can edit that shape and select that point, and I can edit that shape, and of course, everything goes along with it, okay? If I want to put multiple shapes on one shape layer, you'll see that every time I draw a new shape here and I select a new shape, it automatically puts it on its own layer, okay? Automatically does. So I could go through here and I could actually have it so that it doesn't go onto a new layer here. I can actually combine the layers together so that I can keep drawing on one layer. So if I wanted several hearts on one layer, I could just say, okay, combine the layers and I can keep drawing and drawing and drawing all in the same layer. But just like using any other vector shape here, if I would like to knock these out and then I draw like another heart over the top of it here, it combines together, or I can go in and say subtract the front or intersect or exclude overlap there so I can get different outcomes of my vector, okay? So I have the overlap and it does the little, what I call the donut feature, where it overlaps and knocks it out there. If I go ahead and subtract from that there, anything that I draw will then subtract from the front. So a lot of different ways that I can combine these two together. And I don't have to do everything on the layer, I just do what's selected. So I can put them on the layer, knock them out, merge them together, have them be multiple shapes together. Pretty awesome stuff. And I can do absolutely anything that I want. If I wanted to do a gradient or something here, I can't use my gradient tool because it won't let me apply gradient, because a gradient is pixel based, which is where the layer effects really come in handy, because then I could go into my layer effects here and I could actually do a gradient overlay on my vector here. And with that gradient overlay, let me get that out of the way, I could go in and I could apply that, and then I make it appear as if I have a gradient on top of this. It's now a layer effect, because I can't paint on this layer at all. There are no pixels to paint. So therefore, I can't do a gradient, because a gradient is just like a fill. And now I have, a vector that's going to go through and still give me those cool effects. Now, because I have my vector shapes right here, if I want to go in and I want to change the color of everything right here, I could double click on my layer and I could change the color, and of course it's going to go in and change the color overall. I have my gradient effect on there so I couldn't see. I double click on that layer and that's going to change every single item on the layer. Editing, simple. My pen tool, my direct selection tool, I can click on any one of these, and these are my pull handles, my Bezier curves, everything else, simple and easy to go. So infinite editing capabilities here. I can use my pen tool once I master that, and then if you know anything about Illustrator, I can just use vector shapes. Awesome. I can also change the type of lines that we have here. This is something we couldn't do very long ago, CS6, and I don't even think, it could be wrong with Creative Cloud because now we're on Creative Cloud 2014, but they definitely improved this. Here's the thing. If I want this vector to remain vector, I have limited outputs in here. If I save it as a JPEG, it's all vector. If I save it as a GIF, it's all vector. If I save it as anything, it's vector. The only way it's going to save as a vector file is this way. If I go and I save this as a Photoshop file, the vector will remain in there. If I then place it in InDesign, it's going to rasterize it. Okay? When I print it out, it's going to rasterize it. It'll stay vector in the Photoshop file. But if I want to keep this as vector, I have to print right from here. So if I go under the file and choose print, and I'm going to go and I'm going to print this here, it's going to remain vector if I print directly from Photoshop here. So as I go in right there, so I've got printing, marks, functions, features, everything else right there, everything else, there it is, PostScript disabled, everything else. Let's see where my vector is right there. Normal printing right there. Where's my vector? They've changed this. There's the description. Anyway, it's going to print vector. If I print directly from Photoshop here, save it as a JPEG, raster. Import it anyplace else, raster. The other way I can keep it as vector is if I go in and I save it as a Photoshop PDF. And so there's Photoshop PDF right there. And I save this. I'm going to call this vector. And I'm going to save this. It's going to save the layers. So if somebody doesn't have Photoshop, they can open up an Acrobat and they still have the vector. But if somebody has Photoshop, again, it says, okay, settings, you can go ahead and do this in your dialog box. There it is. I want to preserve the editing capabilities. If you've ever seen Illustrator, this is the same preview as Illustrator. I'm going to view the PDF after saving too and click OK. Right there, save the PDF. Yes, I know. And it's going to launch Acrobat, hopefully, right there. And I'm going to then take that and it's got to save. Show PDF files. Where did I save it? Yeah, save it in the wrong place. Oh, it's saving right now. Okay, we had a question here.
So if I do save a Photoshop PDF and then pull that into Illustrator, does it still rasterize it at that point?
Well, I'm going to show you this.
Okay.
Because it's still vector, the PDF, and if you know Illustrator, Illustrator and Acrobat kind of use the same engines to go ahead and develop. But I want to show you one thing very specifically with this. And so let's go here, see if I can open this Acrobat up there. It's still saving here. Wow. Document will be closed after it's saving. Okay. Saving, saving, saving. While that's saving there, I want to show you a couple things. I don't know why it's taken so long to save. Anything that we do with type as well. If I want the type to remain active, I can always take any type and just type something in here on a type layer. I can't do it because, of course, it's saving. There we go. Okay, so any type that I put in here, I can always, if I want to make sure it's going to remain vector-based type, because type is vector, but we always see it as rasterized because we always save it in the raster format. If I take the type and I right-click on the type right here, on the actual type itself, I can rasterize the type, which is going to just pixelate it, which does no good, but I can also convert it to a shape. Once I convert it to a shape there, it is now vector, and it will stay vector as long as I keep it in that format. And why is this not doing, there it is, okay? So now, there's my PDF. I saved it as a Photoshop PDF, okay? I'm going to zoom in really big here, and I'm going to see what's going on here, and I'm going to see, is that actually vector? And it is. I mean, look at how clean that is right there. We're going to get really big, and there's no question about that, that those shapes are vector shapes, okay? We're at 1600% right there, and I don't see any pixels getting in there. However, any of my special effects here, like my bevel and emboss and my drop shadow there, those effects are all rasterized because I've got gradients and things like that. And if I zoom in here, those are all raster-based effects. And they always have been, okay? But my shapes are vector. Absolutely vector, no question about it. They're vector. Now if I put this PDF in InDesign and print it, I have that. So a couple different ways. And then the very antiquated way, which we never use anymore, but I'm going to show you anyway. If you save this as an EPS file, remember those? Way back in the 1940s when we used to use EPS files right there? The drawback of this is if I save this as an EPS file, when I click Save, it's going to tell me, okay, how do I actually preview this right there? Include the vector data right there, but it warns me if I go to try to open up this EPS file, it will rasterize everything when it opens. So if I save it as an EPS file, I can use it forever, but I can't open it back up again and make any edits, okay? So you can if you have to. You know, if somebody's on Corel Draw 6 on a Windows 386 machine, and the only thing that they can take, and you have to bring them to the current century, okay. Don't recommend it for obvious reasons right there. So I can do that with type, but what does that mean if I have a vector-based file, say, coming from Illustrator? Absolutely, I can take it because it's just shapes. And if I really wanted to go in here, I could both bring Illustrator vector-based files into Photoshop and keep them vector or rasterize them. And I can also take any of my vector or shape layers here under the File menu, and I could actually export the paths to Illustrator if I wanted to have this, okay? It's vector, folks. Vector is vector is vector. Not to be confused with Victor, okay? So I can export these paths to Illustrator and open them right up in Illustrator. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open an Illustrator file, and there's my Illustrator file, and I have my shiitake mushroom. You like that? Mm-hmm. Okay? It's all vector-based, okay? And I want to take this and I want to bring it into Photoshop so I can use it for something. I don't know if that's how you say spell it, but it's close enough, okay? It's all outlines, okay? It's all vectorized. I'm going to copy from Illustrator, go back into Photoshop, and I'm just going to do a new Photoshop document. And what's great is that because it's a certain size, Photoshop will, when I create a new document, I don't have to know what size the file is. I can just go create a new document, and it's going to give me that file size. Resolution really doesn't matter unless you're going to use a bevel and emboss and things like that. They're going to be raster-based. So I'm just going to say 300 because I'm going to use it for print. I can always reduce it down for the web. I click OK, and I hit Paste, and it comes in. How would you like to do this? As a smart object? Well, if I put this in as a smart object, it's still vector-based, but in order to edit it, I would have to just go back to Illustrator. Not a problem. If I do it as pixels, we're not talking pixels here, folks. I can just rasterize this if I want to. If I do it as a path, that's not going to do any good. I want to do it as a shape layer so I can have the fill. So I click OK, and there it is. And obviously, I'm going to make it nice and big. So I got my canvas size. There's my shiitake mushroom. I can change the color of that. There it is. Use my direct selection tools, change anything. There it is. It's all just vector. Want to throw a bevel and emboss on it? Yeah, we got time. There we go. That's going to look nice and delicious. That's not enough. I need a really beveled mushroom. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there we go. Fantastic. Okay, fully editable, all vector. Now, I'm going to go in and I'm going to paste this file again, and I'm going to paste this as a smart object instead. Not much different. The only thing is that I don't have the editing capabilities directly in Photoshop to do anything with, but there it is. I paste it as a smart object right there, and I'm going to turn off my shape layer right there. Now with this smart object, if I print directly from Photoshop or save it as a Photoshop PDF, this will remain vector. If I place it into InDesign like this or I do anything else, it's all going to be rasterized. Okay? Same thing. The difference with the smart object is now if I go in and I double click on my smart object icon, it will launch Illustrator, and then I can edit that in Illustrator. And if I save and close the file and I come back in to Photoshop, it will actually change it there. So I don't have the editing capabilities in Photoshop, but because it's a smart object, I can edit it in its other application. Yeah, pretty cool.
Pretty neat.
Yeah,
Do you want to take a couple questions?
let's have some questions.
Let's do it. First of all, W. Neagle wants to know, can the pen tool be used on a layer mask?
So we did masks on Wednesday, and you can use it on a layer mask, but there's different types of layer masks, and I want to show you that.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up a quick image here. Let's see what we've got. Let's do save for the web. And I'm going to open up my beach of Normandy. If I go in and I do a layer mask here, I can go in and I can use a raster-based layer mask, which allows me to go in and I can hide or show on my layer mask right here, okay? So I paint on my mask. If I click my mask button again, I have now introduced a vector mask on top of this, okay? So can I use the pen tool on my actual pixel-based mask? No, it's just gonna give me a path that I then have to turn into a selection. However, if I then introduce a vector mask on top of my layer mask, or my pixel-based mask, and then I use my tool right here to draw, then I actually can go in and I can take my path. I'm in shape, sorry, I was in shape mode here. Let me go to path mode, I can click on that, and if I were to go in, do this and draw here, then that's going to go in and that's going to give me my mask there. Of course, I can invert this mask to make what's black is white there. I can invert that mask right there. Now I can't invert that, I'd have to fill it with a different color. But now I have a vector-based mask on top of a raster-based mask on top of my image. When would you use this? Well, one, you want to do dorky things like put hearts over, certain things and have it show through, and you want to be able to very quickly and easily edit that particular mask. And the reality of it is here, the reason why this mask is doing this is because when I've got this mask, I actually have this set to subtract. So if I have it set to combine or do something else here, I can go in and I can do other items with this mask right there. Yep.
Let's see. L10 and 3 other people wanted to know, can you start with a basic selection with a different tool and fine-tune it with the pen tool?
Pen tool is the pen tool is the pen tool. I can't use any raster-based selection and do anything with it. Pen tool is a means to an end. So I'm going to do the pen tool, I'm going to use that as the path, and I turn it into a selection.
Okay. And then really, really quickly, T. Hudda and 2 others, how did you create the mushroom shape via pen tool without closing the selection or object?
So I didn't create that with the pen tool here.
Okay.
That was created in Illustrator. And so actually what I had done in Illustrator is I had built this all in Illustrator. So these are all complete shapes here, okay? This is a complete path right there. And all I did was I just went in and I just moved this and I basically moved that up and down. I actually didn't use the pen tool at all on this. This is all just using the Pathfinder in Illustrator to subtract shapes and all that. So no pen tool was used in the creation of the mushroom. Here we go, folks. The pen tool. And I love the pen tool. Okay. So if anybody's on Cafe Press, years ago we put this up on Cafe Press and made them into t-shirts because I love the pen tool. Okay? And you may be wondering, okay, I use the pen tool and I've never seen this come up next to the pen tool. It's because you haven't used it enough. But the funny thing is I actually had somebody come up to me and they're like, yeah, I'm not quite getting it. And when they're looking at the shirt, it's like, okay, either you get it or you don't get it. It's the pen tool, okay? You love it or you don't. There's nothing to get about it. So, how many people love the pen tool? Yay! How many people hate the pen tool? Yay!
Use it enough to be familiar with it enough.
The pen tool has a love-hate relationship, but, you know, some people drive the pen tool like they've never driven anything before. And I have to tell you that driving the pen tool is like driving a car. But people seem to have like this disconnect between the car, you know, you turn right and it's supposed to go right, you turn left, it goes left, and you're probably saying, what does this have to do with the pen tool? Well, let me show you, because here we go. I'm actually sitting back in my chair here because I'm getting ready for the race, because people used to just watch me do the pen tool all the time. And here we go, you can watch me use the pen tool. So what is the pen tool used for? Well, the pen tool is used to frustrate and annoy people all around the world. But it does have some useful features as well. One of the things that we use the pen tool predominantly for is basically going in and putting a selection around objects. The pen tool creates a path, and with that path, we then turn that path into a selection. So it's basically means to an end. And when we go in and we turn on our path around our object here, we can actually see this path. Let me go in and I'm going to turn off my view here, so I don't want to go in and I don't want to see my pixel grid on this. There we go. So we can see here that I have a path around my object. And this is very common when we would buy stock photos that were on a single white or solid white background. I wouldn't want to spend the time to knock out the white background because I didn't know my cool trick to knock out the white of the background. But also too, it's a very easy way to put a selection around an image. And so I use my pen tool, I turn that into a selection, and I now have something that stays with the file. And so there's my path around my object. I put my path around my object, and I can turn that into a selection by going in, and I have my selection. Can I do this with a lasso tool? Sure. Take a little bit more time, especially with a more intricate object. It actually works faster, in my belief, with the pen tool, because I can use it a whole lot faster. And it's also more forgiving than going in and using the selection tools. Got lots of great selection tools, but this is one of these ones that we use the pen tool. But if you don't like the pen tool, this is where you're going to learn it. So what the pen tool is used for is exactly that. I want to go in and I want to put a path around an object. But before we actually do that, we have to show you how the pen tool works. So I'm going to start up a blank document here, and I've made the cursor very big. Because what happens when you go to a foreign country and people don't understand you? You talk loud, okay? You don't understand the pen tool, so we're going to make it big so you can hear it. Okay? Lots of simple words. So I increased the pen tool size because using the pen tool, we're going to see a lot of different modes that come into play with the pen tool when we're dealing with the line segments and the points and the type of points that we're going to have and the Bezier handles and the crashes that will go ahead and you'll cause by driving the pen tool. So very basic pen tool etiquette right here. Pen tool, we can click and hold on the pen tool. We've got the pen tool, the freeform pen tool, add anchor point, delete anchor point, and convert anchor point. By the way, the pen tool has no correlation with the pencil tool, okay? So don't even bother. So here's our 5 tools that we can get access to very quickly. And then when we draw a path with our pen tool here, we can go into our selection tool, our path or our direct selection tool to go in and edit these points or these line segments on the path. So what I'm going to do is start off, I'm going to have my paths panel here readily available, and I'm going to show you how we're going to begin to drive the pen tool. Once we master the pen tool, then I'm going to show off and I'm going to show you how we can do this around the object. But for now, fasten your seatbelt because we're going to start off really slow. Everybody got their seatbelt fastened? Turn signal on? Oh, I've got to put gas in the car. Just kidding. Okay, so the pen tool. I'm not going to be switching back and forth between all of these different tools in the pen tool via my toolbar here. We're going to do this all with shortcuts. So we're going to start off and we're going to introduce these shortcuts as we need. Pen tool, I'm going to start off basic stuff. I'm going to click, and when I start off here, you'll see the initial click that I have, I got the asterisk next to my pen tool. That means I'm going to start my path. I'm going to click, and as I begin to click, that little asterisk goes away because I've already started my path. And as I begin to click, every point that I click, I am creating a point that is going to be connected with a line segment. You know this as dot to dot, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. So every place that I click, I'm going to get a straight line in between. When I'm done, I want to complete my path, and when I get to my original point, I hover over that point, I get a circle, it shows me that I'm going to close my path. Done. My path is going to show up in my paths panel right here. I'm going to make that really big so we can see it, because everything is going to be nice and loud. So there is my path. Right? Now from this point, I could take my path and turn it into a selection. But I don't have anything to select right now. I just want to get the pen tool down. So now I've drawn my path here, and that's all good. If I want to edit my path right here, I can. With my pen tool, I can go in and I can add anchor points to any existing line segment. I can delete any existing anchor points, and I can also convert anchor points into what? What could I convert them into? Money? Gold? Fabulous things? Or annoying little Bezier pull handles? You pick and choose. So I want to go in and I'd like to add some points to my lines here so I can then further edit those points. I don't need to introduce any other pen tool here. I could go in and just say add or delete anchor points here. Don't even need to. By default, every time I hover over an existing path here, if I hover over a path or a line segment here, I get the plus, and it's going to tell me if I click here, I am going to get a point. If I hover over an existing point, I get a minus, and I'm really bad at math, so I think it's going to take it away. It sure does. So I can click on those points, and this allows me to add points or take away points. Every time I add a point, that allows me then to go in and move that point and change the shape of my path. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to basically edit my path using my path selection tool. I have my path selection tool, and there's two different ones here. The path selection tool, which if I use that, will select my entire path as a unit. Okay? It selects the path and I can move it around, and I could, if I wanted to transform this, do Command T, I could rotate my path. There it is. My direct selection tool allows me to go in and directly select each and every individual point or line segment separately. And when I go to my direct selection and I click on those points, everything still moves. Huge source of frustration. People are like, yeah, it does it too. Right, because you're not using it correctly. So now that I've drawn my shape or my path, I'm going to click off that here. It resides in my paths panel right here. And I see this, and I have two different methods of looking at this. If in my paths panel it's highlighted in blue, my path is visible, but it is not active because I don't see all the points in the path. If I click off my paths panel right here, it's still there. Now it's no longer visible. So if I want to use my path, I will need to make it visible by clicking on it in the paths panel, and I will need to make it active by clicking on my path selection tool. Okay? And I select that path, there we go. So, two different things. It's not visible, it's not active. It is visible, but it is not active. So if I wanted to use my pen tool and do anything with it, you'll see that I hover over this and it's not showing me any add or subtract. It's showing me the asterisk saying that it's going to start a new path. Right, because even though it's visible, it is not active. So I'm going to take my direct selection tool and I'm going to click on the path, and it's now going to become active. You'll see when I use my direct selection tool, all of the points are empty. That means that even though the path is selected, none of my individual points are actually selected. So I take my direct selection tool and I can click on a line segment and move just that. If I want to move a point, I will click on the point. The point will become black. It is now selected. All the other ones are white or hollow. Those are not selected. I can't move what isn't selected. So the direct selection tool allows me to directly select a single point or multiple points or a line segment and edit just those that I have selected. If it's black, it's selected. If it's white or hollow, it is not selected, and I can't affect those with my direct selection tool. Now I can move this point wherever I want to. If I want to select multiple points, I can click and drag with my direct selection tool over those multiple points, and I can change those points. What happens is when people go in and they use their direct selection tool and they find that they move everything all together, this is what happens. I'm going to click off my path completely. I go to my work path and I click on this, and then I go to my path selection tool and I select my path. Every single point is selected. They're all black. I now go to my direct selection tool to directly edit any one of the points there, and they're all still black. They're all still selected. So I assume that I'm doing something wrong because now I have the direct selection tool and it's not allowing me to directly select. So get in the habit of taking your direct selection tool, deselecting, clicking off so it's no longer active. It's visible, it's not active. Now I'm going to click back on here, and now I have all of my open points. Okay? None of them are filled with black, none of them are selected, so I can select those that I want and I can move just those. If I use my path selection tool, it selects the entire path. It doesn't know when I switch back to my direct selection tool which ones not to select. Okay? So just get in the habit of clicking off it, clicking back on it with the direct selection tool. And now I can go in and I can actually edit my path. Huge source of frustration. That's why I make it very clear. So we can have a path that is visible, a path that is active, and then we can have an entire path that is selected. Very slight different terminology there, but very important when you're learning this so that it saves you years worth of frustration and hassle. Because you'll need those years to be frustrated and hassled with the pen tool from that point on. Okay. So I always like to use shortcuts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this one great shortcut. And I'm constantly going to be using the pen tool and switching over to the direct selection tool to be able to edit those points and those paths as I move along. I switch to my direct selection tool, and then I'm going to jump to my pen tool here. I would like to activate my path. Okay? It's visible, but it's not active. I'm going to hold down my command key, and the command key is going to switch over to the direct selection tool. If that was the last path tool that I used, which is why I said I clicked on my direct selection tool first, then my pen tool, okay? If I last used my path selection tool to select, and then I go to my pen tool here, then it's not gonna do it. I think they fixed it, which is awesome, okay? But usually what happens is the last tool that you use is the last one that you get. And hopefully they fixed that because it's always been an annoying thing. And so I've set my habits up years ago. So pen tool, I can go in and my path is active. I can see those points, and now my pen tool is going to do exactly what I want. Add points on my line segments, take points away there. Can't do it if the path is not active. Okay? Nothing happens. Got to have the path active. Hold down the command key, command click, has my direct selection tool. Now I can take points away or add points with my pen tool. I can then hold down my command key, and I then am able to move my path around just by going back and forth between my pen tool. So I don't have to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to use the command key to go ahead and shuffle back and forth between there. Pretty simple. Now, when we've drawn a path, it comes in as a work path. Okay? If I click off that path and my path is no longer active in the paths panel here, and I decide that I would like to draw another path here, that one goes away. So I start to draw, and all of a sudden, that one goes away. Where did it go? I thought if I draw this, I never deleted that. What's happening here? This is crazy. Well, here's what's happening. You are going crazy, okay? All right, plain and simple. You're just going crazy. But that doesn't mean Photoshop doesn't work the way it works. Here's how it works. When I draw a path here, and my path is actually highlighted and selected here, it doesn't matter if I actually have the path active, or it's selected right here, but it's not active. If I have this selected and I draw multiple paths here, I can get multiple paths on that one particular path. The second it's no longer active or selected here and I start to redraw, it's gone. This is just a work path. And it assumes that when you click off them, you're done and everything else that you draw is going to start all over. This causes a lot of heartache for people that spend hours on doing this. They click off, they come back, and they forget to click back on it and start all over again. It's gone. Like gone in the way of gone, gone. Okay? Frustrating as all get out. So, every path that you want to go ahead and continue working with here, either don't ever walk away from this and click off it, okay? Or go ahead and save this path. And it's not like you go under File, Save, and save the path here. What's weird with this is we're going to save the path by double-clicking on it, okay? Which we would, in most other cases, think that by double-clicking on that name, we actually name it. Well, that's what we're doing. Once I go ahead and name the path, okay, it now has a name to it, and therefore it is saved. All right? Weird, right? Well, my path, once I name it, and it's no longer work path, as long as I name it, it's saved, okay? I click off it, and if I begin to draw another path here, it keeps that path there. That's how you keep your paths. If you like it, name it. If you don't like it, don't name it and lose it all, okay? And so every time I want to save a path, I double click on it like I would a layer here, and I just go in and I name it, which is saving the path, okay? And paths are worth saving. You know, that's all there is, okay? So I'm going to go in and I'm going to name these paths, and they're saved. Great. Now, if I click off them, they don't go away. I can click off them, and I can draw another path, or if I click on them, I just simply add another path to that particular saved path right there, okay? So don't ever click off them without naming them unless you really want to lose it. Have a question here?
That second path you just drew, is it saved to that first panel, or do you have to go back and rename it?
So here's the crazy part. You see when I drew it, it automatically did it here. There is no future saving that needs to be done, okay? Because I've named it, it's saved, and it's saved forever until I delete it. I can add anything I want to with it, and it has been saved, okay? Yes. Sounds like a religious experience, doesn't it? Once you've been saved forever, as long as you're a path. Yep. So we have another question here.
Do from Beats 435, how long do you have to keep the command key held down when you switch from pen to direct selection tool?
As long as you want the direct selection tool, hold that command key down.
Perfect.
Yep. If you want to keep going, keep your foot on that accelerator. Once you let off, everything stops.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Is there a shortcut for switching between the direct selection tool and the regular selection tool? Path
Why,
select?
yes, there is. And you'll see with any of these right here, it's the letter A, okay? So if you press A and keep pressing A, nothing happens. So when you find out that it's the exact same shortcut here under there, what you do is you hold down your Shift key. And so because A is your selection tool and direct selection tool, hold down Shift, and Shift A is going to bring you, yep. There you go. Yep, okay. So now we know how to actually save and name our paths. Once we name the path, as long as we have that one selected, whatever paths that we put on there are all going to be part of it. No need to save it again. It's already been saved. Hallelujah. Okay. Well, now my paths look pretty awful. But hey, you know, I'm just learning how to use the pen tool here. This is the last 5-10 minutes, absolutely huge for when you're trying to use and save all the stuff that you're doing. It's a huge source of frustration for a lot of people. I'm actually going to delete these paths on purpose, okay? And now what I want to do is I want to begin showing you how this pen tool actually works with both straight lines and curved lines. So when I take the pen tool, click, 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 right there. Every time I click, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get a straight line. If I go in and I click and pull, I get my little Bezier handles and I get the curved lines, and that's where I'm going to get all of my curves and I can create a beautiful rounded square. Okay? That's what confounds people. This whole curve thing and how do you actually get the handles and which way do they go, and I can't drive this thing and this is awful and I always get some horrible shape out of it. Driver's ed, folks. This is driver's ed for the pen tool. Okay? Once you get past this, we'll even create a little pen tool driver's license for you. Okay? There I have my shape. But what I want to show you here is how we actually kind of get a better sense of these pull handles. I'm going to start off and I'm just going to use my pen tool and I'm going to create 4 points here and I'm going to create a diamond right there. And I'm going to use my selection tool to go in and select just those points and kind of line those up to do a nice little diamond right here. Okay? I got all the corner points because I simply clicked and connected all those points together. I would now like to go in and I would now like to convert those to curves. Okay? So I know that I could go in and I have my pen tool and my add and delete anchor point tools are here as well, which I get while I'm using the pen tool. The last one is the convert point tool, and we're going to convert these points. The option key is going to turn the pen tool into the convert point tool. Okay? So any corner point that I have, and a corner point has no handles, no little Bezier pull handles on it. A corner point is simply a line segment that meets at a corner. The convert point tool, when I hold down my option or alt key, I'm going to take and I'm going to click on my point and I'm going to pull. And that's going to give me my pull handles. When you get pull handles, that is when you get a curve. Here's the car analogy, okay? Think of a steering wheel. If I pull to the right here and I'm pulling my object out here, and I pull to the right or pull to the left, and I turn my wheel to the left, which way does the car go? Well, for some reason, when people are using the pen tool, if I turn the wheel to the left, they think I go to the right. And driving with the pen tool is absolutely crazy. But we'll show you why people think that. So when I use my convert point tool and I click and I drag, I'm actually converting that from a point to a smooth connection or corner. And when I do that and I click and pull, you can see the distance that I pull and the amount that I pull is going to control that curve. All right? The more I pull, the more of a curve I get. The more I turn the steering wheel, the more the car turns. Direct analogy right there. So that's great. I took 4 points that were corner points and I went ahead and I pulled them out. Now I'm going to actually draw the circle here using this. So instead of click, 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 I'm going to click and pull. The direction that I pull my pen tool and the distance that I pull the pen tool is going to determine the direction, the line that's going to come out of that point, and also how far it's going to come out of that point. So if I pull it to the left, my line coming out is always going to go to the left. Always. Okay? Always. So I clicked and I pulled here, and now I'm going to click down here, and sure enough, the line comes out, it goes to the left, right? Follows that there. So what happens if I click here and I pull out here, and I put my point over here? The line is going to come out to the left, because that's the direction that I pulled, and then it's going to go ahead and meet that point. Always happens. Okay? So I'm going to click and pull. I'm going to click and pull. I'm going to click and pull. Click and pull. And I'm going to go back to my original one, and I've got it all together. Beautiful. Awesome. Delicious. Lovely. All great adjectives when you know how to use the pen tool. Okay? There we have it. Well, that's great, okay? Circles are easy, right? You got 4 points and you can put it all around there. Absolutely. So now I'm going to walk you back through here, and I'm going to show you, when I click on any one of my points here, people always ask, why is it that sometimes if I click on something, I sometimes see handles and I sometimes don't? Well, for many different reasons. If you don't see handles, you have a corner point, okay? But it's like, I don't see handles coming out here, I only see handles coming through here. It all depends on what you select. I've clicked on this line segment, so the 2 handles that control the curvature of that line segment are the only 2 handles that are going to show up. That's it. because I've clicked on that line segment. Now, what I told you is when I pull the handle in the direction, the more I pull it, the more that curve is going to go that direction. So, in order to grab the pull handles themselves, I have to have my direct selection tool so I can directly grab onto that handle. So, I'm going to select that line segment, and the two curves or the 2 points that make up that line segment are the only ones that are highlighted. Makes sense. If I take this handle and I make this handle shorter, I get less of a curve. The more I pull the handle, the more of a curve I get. So I can do it 2 different ways. I can pull this handle and get a curve, sure. I can pull this handle, I can get a curve, sure. Okay? If I pull it really far, I get a really big curve. Okay? That's how I have it. Now, let's talk about direction. If I pull the handle up, it goes up. Absolutely. I pulled the handle up, the curve went up. I pull the handle down, it goes down. I pull it to the left, it goes to the left. I pull it to the right, it goes to the right. Just like a steering wheel. No way. Yeah, really. Okay? More you pull it, more it stretches. Okay? Direction, everything. Wow. It's awesome. Okay? Pretty simple. So now, what happens if I go in and use the direct selection tool and I click on an actual point? Now it seems like I get a lot more handles. Absolutely. So I've clicked on that point, and we now have the 2 curves that are coming up to the point. So we get that point with the pull handles on that point, as well as the curves that are connecting to the other points. So I know I've got handles down here, but they aren't relevant. They're only relevant to this. So if I hold down my command key to get my direct selection tool, and I move this over here, I move this over here, those curves are clearly going to go with it. Yep. Now, what happens if I don't want a curve and I have one? I could go back in and I could suck those handles right back in, right there, but it's kind of a pain because I got to get in there and do that. So a cool way to go in and take the handles out, just suck the handles back in, hold down the Option key and hover over that point and Option click on any point that has handles. Sucks them right back in. Okay? Sucks them right back in. Sucks them right back in, sucks them right back in. And now I end up with corners. Option click and drag is going to pull them out. Option click and drag, pull it out. Option click and drag will pull them out. Option click and drag will pull them out. Hold down the command key, adjust the points, pull the handles. Yeah. Now you'll notice when I grab on one of the Bezier handles themselves, okay, this is my point, this is my handle, not to confuse them. When I pull on one, you'll see that when I pull down on the one handle, it goes up on the other side. Absolutely. Because if it didn't, it would make teeter-totters no fun. You'd sit on one side, and the other person would still be sitting on the ground. You'd go up and down, the other person would still be sitting there. What's the fun in that? Okay? So with this, I push down on one side, the other side goes up. Yep. Because it's a smooth curve here, I want to be able to go in and keep the curve smooth. So I push it down here, other side goes up. There you have it. Yep, clicked off it there. And that's what I'm dealing with when I deal with my points. If I can actually click on that little thing there, working 60 feet away from the screen is kind of hard. Okay, so there's my points right there. So I think we're kind of getting the jive of this, right? Awesome. So now how do we go in and create all these absolutely wild, crazy shapes? Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go in and I would like to make this curve go this way. So I'm going to kind of do a concave curve right over here, okay? So I know that by listening to my voice in my head, and hopefully my voice is in your head by the video, if I pull this handle the direction that I'd like this to go, I would like this to then curve down here. So I know if I hold down my command key and pull the handle this way, that curves here, but clearly I get this blump coming out the other side. Well, I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something different. I'm actually going to change the direction of the points. So if I use my direct selection tool here and I pull the handle, I'm always going to get a symmetrical curve no matter what. But here I would like to do what's called a change of direction. So I'm going to hold down my Option key. And I know if I Option click on the point, it's going to suck the handles back in, if there are handles. Or if I Option click on something that doesn't have handles, it's going to pull handles out. And that's by Option clicking on that point. But if I option click on a handle, I can now drive that separately. And that allows me to do a change of direction. So option click on the handle, I change the direction, and now I can come to a point, stop that point, and curve all the way on back. Why is that useful? Because I said so. But let me show you an example. I start off here and I would like to create a nice wave. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to pull. Which way am I pulling? To the right. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create the curve of my wave. Whatever direction I turn it, I'm going to get that direction. The more I pull, the more of a curve. I'm going to come up here to the very tip of my wave, right there. There's the tip of my wave. I want that to be a sharp point, right? If I come back down here, it gives me this rounded point and then my wave looks all crazy. Well, I could finish my line here, with my wave and try to do it really good. And then I could go back here and I could then pull that handle in by holding down my option key and turning it the other direction here and getting kind of a saw blade. And I'm not really good at kind of doing that, and it's like, bleh. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to draw my wave and I'm going to draw it and I'm going to edit it on the fly. So I'm going to come and do my curve. I'm going to come up to the very point right here. And now I want to take that handle and I want to point it the direction. So as I'm building, I'm going to be editing this. So in order to change the direction, I'm going to hold down my option key and I'm just going to change this handle. And I'm going to point it the direction that I want it to go. Pretty simple. Then I'm going to come back down here and sure enough, I get that little point. And now I can come down and I can create another curve and I get kind of my sawtooth or my wave. And I stopped in midstream and I was able to change the direction right there. We're going to change the direction all the time with these things, okay? So I'm going to draw a quick little heart right here. Click, click, and now I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do the one lump of the heart. So I'm going to get that little bump right there. I'm going to come back down into the middle. I've pulled my handle this way. It's going to come out this way and it's going to come back down. Boom. But now I know if I were to pull down here, it's going to change the direction. So if I come down here and I click and pull and I get my curve, my handle's going down. Which way is my curve going to come out? The way I pulled my handle. I don't want it to come out that way. I want it to come out this way. So I'm going to turn the handle the direction I want to go. And then when I do my next curve, it changes the direction, comes back down here, and I can do my heart. Okay? Now another way that I can do a change of direction that's even better than that, but we just want to keep in mind that whatever direction the handle goes is the way the path is going to come out. So I'm going to do this again here. I'm going to draw the heart. I'm going to put it over here as well, and I'm going to then drag down here. I want to go in and point the handle whatever direction, but it's kind of a hassle to go in and then move that and make sure it goes the right direction. Well, what I'm going to do is, because I'm in the process of building my path here, I'm actually going to option click on that open end and it sucks the handle right back in. I have no handle, which means I can go any direction that I want to. So now if I decide to come out over here, go up over here, I haven't even put a direction in. This little handle suck in thing only works when I'm in the middle of drawing, okay? I can go in and option click, and you see when I do that, my pen tool turns into the pen tool with the little convert, and I can suck that handle in while I'm in the middle of drawing, okay? If I have completed my path and I go in and I hold down my option key and I option click on something, it's then going to suck all those handles in, okay? But when I'm in the middle of drawing here and I'm doing my curves, option click on that endpoint, sucks it in, and now I can go any direction that I want to. So now I can change the direction right on the fly as I go. And you can see why it's very important to have the pen tool extremely large, because this is going to convert my point right here, and this is going to go ahead and change the direction of my open point. A lot of different things to go ahead and realize, which is why you need to buy the video and you need to watch this over again and again and again. Because driver's ed isn't learned in 5 minutes. So now we know how to drive it, but how do you actually navigate the curves? Well, funny you should ask. There are some nice curves. Where do I put the points? How do I pull? Where do I pull? How do I accelerate? Where do I brake? You know? Well, those are all really good questions. And I'm going to show you how we do that. So what I have here is I have a letter S. Revealing, is it not? Yes. I like to do the S-curve simply because I want to show you where we're going to put points on and where we're actually going to click our pen tool. So if I took my pen tool and I started drawing here, around there, people start at a point and then they're like, okay, I'm going to do this here and I'm going to pull this handle and I'm going to put one here and then over here and over here, and then I'm going to move this all around and do this whole thing, and you know, I'm going to try, and then of course I end up with something like this and I get all around there and it's like, okay, great, wow. Well, you know, yeah, okay. Thank goodness we're going to get rid of it. So what I want to show you here is the basic points where you're going to actually land your points for your pen tool in order to be able to do your curves. And I'm going to start off here, and I'm going to do a nice little small brush right here. And of course, my cursor is really big, so it looks like my brush is really big, but it isn't. So every place that I want to land a point is going to be the change of direction, okay? So obviously, here's a change of direction right there, absolutely, okay? And I'm also going to come to the top, because the way I look at this is the curve comes up, and it stops, it's no longer curving up, and it's now starting to curve down. Change of direction, okay? So at the top, so I just think of a circle, top, bottom, left, right of a circle is a change of direction. It arcs up, it no longer arcs up, it begins to arc down. So I'm going to put a point there, I'm going to put a point here, I'm going to put a point here, and then here is kind of a fuzzy area, okay? Because at some point it curves down, and then it has to start changing the curve here. So I'm going to kind of guess that I'm going to put a point someplace in here. And we kind of have to do it in the right place, or else our curves are all off. Obviously, that's a change of direction, that's a change. It's a change of direction there, there, at the bottom, on the outside, and of course we get this weirdness here. It curves in and then it starts to curve back around. So I'm going to say right about here, there, and there. Okay? So those are my basic points at which I'm going to go ahead and do. So I got my change of direction here. This was the most frustrating thing ever to go ahead and teach, because I had tried to watch videos on people using the pen tool, and people would be like, well, you know, you just got to try this. No, 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 no. I wanted a way that the pen tool works so that I could tell you where you put your points, other than, well, you put your points in the right place. Well, where is that right place? Okay? Of course, when you know how to do it, you can do it, but explain it to me. So I'm just going to knock those points back there on the opacity so we can kind of see. So now I'm going to go through and I'm going to land my points here, and I'm going to talk my way through it fairly quickly, because I know time gets really short when you're driving with the pen tool, okay? So I'm going to start here, and I'm a lefty, so I always go to the left. Doesn't matter. But here's an interesting thing that I want to show you real quick. If I go in and I'm doing something and I'm actually drawing my shape to the left right here, and I go in and I want to then pull handles out of here by holding down my Option key. I click and I pull, and why does my little handle overlap itself here? Well, what happens is, because I'm a lefty and I always go counterclockwise here, the way I draw is always counterclockwise. So when I do this, I do counterclockwise, and I don't know that I've just drawn this counterclockwise, but when I pull my handles out, I also need to make them counterclockwise, or else if I pull the opposite direction, whatever direction I pull my handle, that's the direction the curve goes. And I get these little overlapping loops right there. So it's now one of those things where it's interesting, because I ask my students this, how many people actually draw right-handed? And then you say, oh, I draw clockwise as well. But several of them actually use the pen tool counterclockwise, and every time they use their Option key to pull handles out of a corner, they're like, it keeps doing this. What's wrong with this? It's you, the driver, that's doing it wrong. You're driving the opposite direction. It's just one of those weird things that people have, okay? And of course, I just hit delete and got rid of my layer right there. There we go, back up. Okay, so I always do counterclockwise there. That way, whenever I pull a handle out, I always pull it the way I drew the shape. A little bit of information. So I'm going to land a point here, and then the next point is going to be at my change of direction. I'm going to click, and I'm going to pull. And if I pull down, I'm going to get the opposite lump up. If I pull up, I'm going to get the opposite lump down. But I want to go and I want to pull and I want to get that right there. Well, how far do I pull? Well, I'm going to pull out to the point where it's going to marry with my curve pretty well. Okay? Now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to click on that point, and it matches my curve. And I realized that I started a little bit out here, so I'm just going to hold down my command key to get my direct selection tool, and I'm going to pull that in. Okay? Now I'm going to come down here, and I think I misplaced that dot. It's supposed to be right about there, so I'm going to click and pull, and I'm going to do this. Now I've got a problem here, because I pulled this handle really far, right? And here's my next point. So it's going to come out over here, it's going to shoot way over, and it's going to come right back to that point right there, because the more I pull my handles, the more of a curve I get. I had to get this, so here's where I'm going to go back it off, right here. But how far do I back it off? I'm not going to do that quite yet. I'm going to show you what happens. So I click here, comes way out, and then it comes way back, because I pulled this handle really far. So let me back up here. So I have my handle. How far do I pull that handle back? Do I go in, do I pull the handle back? This far, this far, this far, whatever distance, right there. I'm going to do this with my command key, and I'll show you why. Okay, I'm going to pull that back, and you can see I'm kind of teetering on right there. I'm going to show you and tell you it's the 50% rule. And what the 50% rule is that I want to be halfway between the point that I drew and the point that I'm going to land, roughly halfway. Anything more than that, I'm going to get too much of a curve. Anything less than that, I'm going to get too little. And so if I were to go in here and I were to draw an imaginary line right here and an imaginary line right here where my points touch, I'm going to land that point 50% of the way in between. And now when I get here and I click on this point right here and I click and pull, look at that. Just like that. Delicious. Yes. Okay? Now, I've pulled this point here. I'm going to zoom back out here, and I think this is the bottom one right here. I'm going to pull that point as well. Do that, come back up here, click and pull. Ah, I got my curve. Now what's going to happen? My curve is going to head off the direction that I did it. So I have one of two things. I can hold down my Option key and direct my path right there and put it along there. I'm just going to Option click and suck it in. Because if I don't get that direction exactly where I want it to go, I'm going to end up with a slightly altered line. I'm just going to suck the handle in because now I can go anywhere. So I'm going to click there, perfect. And I didn't click and pull here to get my curve, but I could have. But if I had gone in and I clicked and pulled here, then of course I've got to go do the same thing. This is a straight line, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to click right there, and there we go. Now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click and pull. I'm going to pull that handle, beautiful curve right there. I'm going to come back around here. I'm going to click and pull this right there, get that curve. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to click and pull, and I've got to pull really far because it's an exaggerated curve. And this goes way past my point. If it goes past my point, you know, you got to swing really wide. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to suck that right back in. Now I'm using my Option key here, and do you see how I'm getting this not in line with the other one? This is really bad. I want to use my selection tool, my direct selection tool, when I'm doing something with a curve. Because if I go in and use my Option key and I do this, and I change this plane right here, that's going to cause a little hitch right there. I'm going to get a little peak or a little valley because I'm changing the direction. It's going to stop and I get that peak. So, because I'm in the middle of a curve and I still want to continue that curve, I want to use my direct selection tool because I know I'm always going to get a smooth curve. This helps me guide this along so that when I have this, if I'm not very steady with this, I want to make sure I pull it in, but then I keep that curve. By doing that, it's always going to operate on the same plane, and I'm going to get a beautiful curve. If I go in and I do hold down my Option key, now I'm going to get a bump. Okay, so use your direct selection tool when you're trying to pull the handle in and you want it to a continuous curve. So then I'm going to pull this back right there. I'm going to land another point, pull that curve. I'm going to come back here and pull that right there as best I can. That's not quite in the right place. And here's where I can go in and use my Option to go ahead and suck it back in. Because I'm not worried about, because here if I do this, I change the curve. Don't want to. So now I'm going to either Option click and drag that in or Option click there, and I'm going to complete my path. There's my path. Change of direction, smooth, and corner points when I go in and change. Now I realize that some of these are not quite right, and some of these are not quite right because I didn't quite touch the path. So I'm going to select this with my direct selection tool, and I'm going to move this down. There it is. And I see that, okay, I pulled this a little bit far right there. So I just got to tuck this back in just a little bit so that it touches the line. Beautiful. I am not using my Option key here because then that causes a little lump right there. And when I have that lump, that's what I get. And I get these little bumps in there. Don't want to have that at all. Okay? I want to be able to go in and I want to be able to pull the curves. Now, which handle do I pull? Because both of these handles make up the curve. Okay? Well, this is kind of a slow curve here, and then it curves a little bit faster. I've already pulled this handle out, and I'm already a little bit past the 50% mark, okay? So if I were to draw a line here and here, this is a little bit over the 50% mark. So I don't want to keep dragging this, or else I'm going to get a pregnant curve. So I'm going to actually pull this one up to help compensate for that curve, and it falls in beautifully, okay? This takes time. It really does. And if I couldn't show you how to do it really well, what's the point of me showing you the pen tool? Okay? Now, here's the tricky part too. This is landed here, and this is looking pretty good. So I've got that handle pulled out right there, and this is way over the 50% mark right there. I'm going to pull this down a bit to see if I can get that there and land that, and it's awesome. Okay? And the reason why this is past the 50% mark is because this is really short. This is really long, and I had to do a really fast and then a very slow sweeping curve right on around. Go and look at that. That looks good. This one's slightly off, so I want to get in here and I want to get that and I want to pull that up. And I realize that my curve is slightly off, and I think it's because I just need to move this over ever so slightly right there. When I do that, now, got that. I realize if I bump this up, it pulls the other side down. So clearly, I'm going to pull this out a little bit more, and then I need to adjust that, and in it goes. That one needs to come down ever so slightly, right there. Pull that a little bit more, tuck that in, really good. Looking good, all the way on around. Flat edges here, that's easy. You know, just bump it right out to the edge, and around we go. There we have it. Yep, pull that in. And you get the sense of how we're going to go in, and we're going to adjust our curves so that we can get those curves to be just right. There it is. Okay? So there's my shape. I can clean that up. But now I want to do this on an actual image. Okay? And I want to turn it into a selection. Because I've got this, I want to turn this into a perfect selection, and then we're ready to rock and roll. So that's how you drive the pen tool. When I have a selection here, I'm going to use this mailbox. Stock photo, so I've got really clean edges here. And I'm going to run through this really quickly on how I would go ahead and do this. And then I'm going to show you the advantages of using the pen tool rather than using the lasso tool or the polygon lasso tool. So I'm going to zoom in really close, and I'm going to start. And I get really close here. Now, as I'm going along here, I'm using a straight line between everything. But I've got all these pixels that are all a little jagged. Do I go in and do I create a path that's like this along here? Absolutely not. Okay? I could, way too much time. And here's the advantage of using the pen tool. So I'm going to start off here, I'm going to make it big, and I'm going to go ahead and click right there, start it off, click right here. Okay? Straight line, don't need to go ahead and do any click and pull. This is a curve. And I could do one of two things with this. I can take this and I can go all the way over the curve like this and do that, but then I have to deal with this little handle. Option click, suck the handle right back in. Okay? Straight line yet again, up, and I have a curve, so I'm going to come and I'm going to curve that right over, zoom in really close to see. I have a handle sticking out, option suck in the handle. I'm going to put a point right there at the top to get the dome. I'm going to come back down here. That's going to be too long, so I'm going to pull that handle back in to land that dome. And then I'm going to come over here and do that. Handle's pointing the wrong direction. Option click to suck that handle back in. Go all the way on up until I get that curve. Curve over the top, click and pull. This is going in a straight line, so I don't have to do anything with that handle. It's pointing exactly the direction that I want to go. Click on that. I get my curve, get right to there, click and pull, handle's going the wrong direction, Option click to suck it in, curve that right around the top, curve that right there at the farthest point, and I'm going to come down here, and I want to put it right about there with that change of direction, right there. I'm going to need to suck that in just a little bit, and then right back there as well, straight across. Click and drag at that point, suck that handle in, it's going the wrong direction. Do a straight one down there, all the way on down. And now I've got my little reflection here, okay? It's kind of reflecting off the mailbox. And, well, actually, it's actually going all the way right on down. So this isn't in the right point. I'm actually going to hit delete and go right back. Now, I've actually deleted that point from the path, and now I have to reconnect that path. This is why you got to pay attention to the pen tool. See that little asterisk? I get that asterisk? It says I'm starting a new path. I don't want to. I want to continue on. So when I see this, I see that my path was left right there. I need to reconnect to that path, okay? Because I put that one point in there, and I didn't want that point there, okay? I can't delete the last point by using my delete anchor point with a pen tool, because where do I go? So I hit delete, and it deletes that last path. I need to go back to my last point, and I get my little pen tool with a little connector there. I need to reconnect. Whenever you see the asterisk, you are going to be starting a new path. I don't want to. I want this to be a single path. Find my last open path, and then I can reconnect with this, bring it in, click on that, go around, and I'm going to zoom through this really quickly here. I'm going to get to the top of my mailbox right there, come down along the side, put that right there. Get it. Ooh, yeah, there we go. Option click, zoom in a little bit there. It's a little bit off. Take that, kind of park it right there, connect the pen tool, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to go through and do the whole thing. I'm just going to go around these particular letters right here. I'm using a space bar to get my hand tool to move very quickly so I don't have to keep stopping and doing what mess up what I'm doing right there. And away we go through the whole thing. So I'm going to complete the path really quickly here, and I'm just going to go back over here and go in and complete that path right there. So there's my selection around that object. And in order to turn this into a selection, I can always right-click on my, actually click on my cheese grater here, and I can turn this into a selection. Other easier ways to turn this path into a selection, hold down the Command key on the path, right there, Command-click, turns it into a selection, or, even better yet, Command-return, and it turns it into a selection. Okay? How good of a selection did I do? Because a path is going to just connect points together, and I know that all my pixels are jagged. Okay? So what's nice about this is if I was using the lasso tool or something like that, I realize that if I use my lasso tool, this is really hard with a lasso tool or something to go along the edge. I've turned this into a selection, and my selection isn't correct. Easy. I'm going to deselect that. I'm going to go back to activate my path, go back to my pen tool, and I'm going to take that path right there, and I'm just going to edit my path. Command click, turn, or Command return, reactivates the path. So this is a whole lot easier than trying to adjust a selection by adding to or taking away from a selection here. It's just absolutely brilliantly easy when it comes to changing it. Now, how do I know if my path is really where it's supposed to be? Well, this is how. When I see this, my path is not in the right place. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to adjust the path. And how does it know what pixel to select and what pixel not to select? Because I see this path is one smooth line, and I know these are squares. How does that work? Well, whenever I see the path right here, anything inside the path, if I have more than half a pixel inside the path, it's going to select that pixel. Okay? It's going to select this pixel right here because more than half of it is inside the path. It will definitely select this one. It'll select this one. It'll select that one. It's not going to select that pixel there because more of it is outside the path. Watch this. So it won't select this pixel. I do Command return, and it didn't select that pixel. Okay? So now when I look at my path, I can see this, and I can see my path, and I'm just going to put a point here, and I can move this in so I can actually snap to my pixels here, and I can actually adjust that path so that I can do an average of what I'm going to select. Now, because we're dealing with an image here, I think that I'm doing a really good selection and I want to include